Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gene Brister welcoming you to the El Centro Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau Candidates Debate. Tonight's debate will feature candidates running for 3 El Centro City Council seats. Tonight's coverage from the IID Auditorium is produced by KXO Local News as a public affairs presentation. And now, here's tonight's debate moderator, Bill Dubois.
Thank you, Gene. I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight and welcome you to the El Centro Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau Candidates Debate and Forum. I especially want to thank KXO Radio for broadcasting the event. I hope all the members of the audience will join me in switching your telephones and beepers to silent before we get started. Remember that the restrooms are right out the hallway, and the nearest exit, in case of any emergency, may not be the one you came in. There's one over there on the left. The City Council race is for 3 open seats, and there are 5 candidates running for those 3 seats. Prior to tonight's debate, the candidates drew at random for their seating positions. I will remind the candidates to answer your questions to the audience, not to us questioners, when you're answering your questions. And I would like to, at this time, introduce our candidates. We have Jason Jackson, who is the General Manager of Desert Security Services. We have candidate Sedelia Sanders, incumbent. Candidate John Edney, incumbent also. And candidate Gustavo Reza, an Economic Development Specialist. And candidate Efrain Silva, incumbent. The first round of questioning will involve questions asked to the candidates, and we have Eusebio Arbayo, who is our timer tonight, which we appreciate his assistance. Also, our questioners, Gene Oswalt and Charisse Alford, are here. Luis Plancarte, our Sergeant-at-Arms, and we're assisted by our question sorter, Kathy Kinnerson. At this time, each candidate has an opening statement, and the time limit is 1 minute per candidate. I would like to ask Jason Jackson to begin with his opening statement.
Good evening, everybody. First, I'd like to thank the El Centro Chamber of Commerce and the Governmental Affairs Committee for their hard work in staging tonight's forum. This election is about choices. Candidates up here are here to present their ideas, their thoughts, their remedies for our future. The choices are that you have 3 incumbents and you have 2 that are running for those seats. You can either be happy with the decisions and the choices that have been made, or you can have some change. But not just change for change's sake, but clearly you must have change that is determinate, that is well-informed, and prepared for the challenges that this city may face. I've lived here my whole life. I've done community service in this city. I participated on the El Centro Planning Commission. I'm chairman of the chairman of the Workforce Development Board for Imperial County. These are skills and skill sets that I've learned, that I've taken advantage of, that I will bring to the city of El Centro to make the city better moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mrs. Sanders, opening statement.
Good afternoon, or good evening, I should say, to all of you here in this audience. I am very pleased to be before you. Thanks to the Chamber and their Governmental Affairs Committee for hosting this event. It certainly gives each of you a chance to review and listen to the comments going to be made by each of us. I've served on the City Council for a number of years, and over those years I've put together with a team of council members the policies that have certainly made life better for the residents of El Centro. We've worked hard together, and in that we have moved forward on many of those projects and programs that you told us that you were most interested in, especially those that would enhance your quality of life, from streets to roads to recreational opportunities, as well as opportunities for multi-generational expansions, healthcare, etc. So as you began to cast your vote on November 8th, I ask that you would cast that for me, Sedelia Sanders. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edney?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm very happy to be here tonight. Let me begin by stating how much enjoyment and appreciation I have for having had the opportunity to serve this community over the last 8 years. I may not be the nicest city council member. I certainly, according to the editor of the paper, do not have the most tact. I won't disagree with those. But what I do and what I have done for the 8 years I've served you as a city council member is delivered results. When this community asked that the city finances be put in order, we did. 7 straight years of balanced budgets. When this community asked that we improve the infrastructure of this community, we did. We built a new water plant, we upgraded the sewer plant, and we, as of next April, will have completed repair on 88% of the streets in this community. When the seniors came to us and said we've been waiting for a senior community center for years, we delivered. When the parents, children in this community said we need something else to do, we delivered. We're building the largest, most dynamic multi-recreational center, the Martin Luther King Park.
Thank you, Mr. Edney.
Ask for your support on March 8th.
And Mr. Reza.
Good evening. My name is Gustavo Reza. For over 20 years, I have lived in the city of El Centro with my wife and 3 children. I hold a law degree from the Universidad Iberoamericana from Mexico City and have been directly involved over the past 15 years in local business and economic development activities benefiting local residents. I am running for the opportunity to represent you upon the El Centro City Council. With your support, we can work towards addressing the most pressing issues afflicting our city: the lack of an effective economic growth strategy, the lack of business supportive measures to promote business creation and expansion opportunities, spiraling unemployment, and the loss of our downtown area. Throughout my professional career, I have successfully undertaken various business and economic development projects, gaining the knowledge and experience which is greatly needed on the City Council to face the current economic crisis. During the last 2 years, my activities have directly resulted in the creation of over 15 businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Silva.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me thank the El Centro Chamber of Commerce for organizing tonight's forum. I have had the privilege and honor of serving on the El Centro City Council for the last 4 years, and I'm now seeking re-election. The last 4 years have been the most rewarding years in my almost 20 years of political office here in El Centro. Let me summarize what we have done, and my fellow council members, Sedelia, Sanders, and Edney have also recapped the accomplishments. We have a balanced budget with no furloughs, no layoffs. Our basic infrastructure has been improved, as mentioned by Mr. Edney. Our recreation in terms of our sports complex is going to get started fairly soon. Our multi-generational center that also provides services to our community. Our events that promote the culture of our community. I have a vested interest in the future of our city. The decisions that we make today will have an impact on generations to come, and I take that responsibility very seriously. I ask for your support.
Thank you very much. We will begin now with question block number 1. And that's where we are going to ask each candidate the same question, and they will have 2 minutes each to answer. There will be no rebuttals on this round of questions. I'd also like to welcome the listeners we have from Ivy Press Online, who is streaming the event live. And I'd also like to thank Ivy Newsday for taping the event as well. Now, there are plenty of question forms available for the audience. We will have another round of questions that the audience can ask, and if you wish to ask a question, please fill out a form. It's right back there against the back wall, or if you'll raise your hand, one of our staff will bring the question form to you. We'll make sure to get your question on the docket here. All right, for question block number 1 with 2 minutes per candidate, we'll have Shri Salford ask the first question.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, as a city council member, what would you do to stimulate economic growth in El Centro?
Well, I think this is one of my strong points. I've served on the Imperial County Workforce Development Board for 5 years. I've been elected chairman for the past 4 years. We've worked hand in hand with the Economic Development Agency, and we've tried to draw in industry to this region. Obviously, we've all heard about renewable energy or the potential for the renewable energy capital of the world being Imperial County. This is an industry that we certainly need to grab a hold of and really try to fast track it through. Unfortunately, we've had some delays with litigation from different entities that have slowed that growth. But these are jobs that are not only jobs that we need for this valley, but they're good paying jobs. They're livable wage jobs. People can afford to buy homes. They can afford to buy cars. They can invest that money into this economy, which we greatly need. My experience on the Workforce Development Board, I think, would play a huge role in trying to develop that, trying to bring industry into not only the city of El Centro, but thinking regionally. I think although my first responsibility be for the residents of El Centro, we need to start thinking regionally. We need to bring industry into Imperial County. Those jobs are going to be jobs that are going to be held by residents of El Centro, residents of Brawley, Imperial, Calexico. So it's not about fighting between cities. It's about bringing industry into this county and benefiting all the residents of the county, including the citizens of El Centro.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanders, as a city council member, what would you do to stimulate economic growth in El Centro?
El Centro is on the cusp of growing, and of course, as you know, the economic engine that we've been utilizing for a number of years have been greatly curtailed, and that's the redevelopment agency. Having said that, there's still other avenues that we might be able to pursue. We'd continue to work in partnership and in harmony and collaborate with other regions, other cities within this region. But as we do that, we cannot take our eye off the ball as to what's currently in place. I think it's imprudent for us to understand that to stimulate the economy when you're in an economic downturn is not the most easy task. And I think it would be misunderstood by everyone to leave this room in thinking that there is a magic silver bullet that we would be able to utilize and do that with. But on the other hand, the things that El Centro are currently doing, I think we would maintain those and keep it in place. We would continue to work with our incubator, and certainly those entrepreneurs who are looking for a way for starting up their business, we do have those incubator bays, and we would have those available. We would continue to move forward in looking at ways to partner with the Chamber and with the Navy League and trying to attract the strike fighter force here in El Centro. Those are some of the aspects that we would be able to do in the short term. Having said that, I think it would be prudent for us to also expand that and begin to collaborate with the higher education pieces, IVC and San Diego State University, to make sure that those businesses that we wish to attract would in fact have a labor pool and a labor force that would be ready to accept the jobs once they came into the valley.
Thank you. Mr. Edney, as a city council member, what would you do to stimulate economic growth in El Centro?
Well, thank you for the question. I will tell you this. As Ms. Sanders suggested, there is no magic wand. And for too long in this community and communities throughout the state, we've tried to count on government to solve every single problem. I am the only, I believe, small business owner sitting up here among the candidates. And I can tell you, as a small business owner for many years in this community, the most I want from my government is to get off my back. The costs that are incurred every year by local, county, state, and federal governments and the burden it puts on us is tremendous. Right now, in the last 30 days, the governor will sign somewhere close to 150 new regulations and laws in the state of California. That creates an impact on us locally. We have an ability to create jobs, and the best people to do that are you out there in the community. It's not government. What we need to do is get out of the way. We need to provide the infrastructure. We need to provide the resources of information. We need to make educational opportunities. And we need to let entrepreneurs, people, get out there and produce the jobs that we need. That's the economic benefit that will be created in this community when we free the burdens of things. When you talk about many of the regulations individually, they're small. It's a $50 fee, it's a $60 fee, it's a $100 fee, it's a $400 fee. When you add those up collectively, guess what? you're costing someone a job. We have the opportunity in this state, but we're not taking advantage of those opportunities. We are bleeding jobs away from the state of California. It makes it very difficult for a community like the Imperial Valley and the city of El Centro to attract those jobs. Instead of us relying on more government intervention, let's rely on the people. Let's rely on creating better education opportunities. Let's rely on people who will use their own entrepreneurship, their own ideals, and they will create the jobs, and that will create the impact that will benefit this community.
Mr. Reyes, as a city council member, what would you do to stimulate economic growth in El Centro?
Let's get down to the main point of what's going on in El Centro. We have a very high unemployment rate. We have the city council acting against the interests of local businesses. I am also a business owner. I have supported local businesses. I have assisted people in creating local businesses and bringing funds into this community. I am the coordinator for the local aid program. I assisted in creating and developing a local grant program that will award $50 million into our local community to create local businesses and promote the growth of those businesses and hopefully create jobs. Over the last 2 years, I've created over 100 businesses, over 300 employment slots. Where is the problem in our local area? The other four candidates have talked about the things they've done in the past. Well, let's talk about what they did in the past. Just a few months ago, they eliminated the facade program, which is a program that provided local businesses with the opportunity to invest into the outside appearance of the business that would create the opportunity to bring in consumers and increase their revenue and also our tax revenue. They voted to eliminate funding to the Small Business Development Center. They voted to reduce the funding to $1,000 a year to the Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation, which is focused on bringing industry into our community. They voted to reduce funding to $2,500 to the Imperial Valley Film Commission, which brings needed dollars into our community. That's what they've done. They're here talking about, we're going to do this. We change things. I challenge them to say one regulation they have changed in these last 4 years that has benefited local businesses, where they have reduced fees, where they have reduced regulations. They have not done so. But they sit here telling you, we're going to do this in the next 4 years. They didn't do it in 4 years. Do you expect them to do it in the next 4 years? I don't think so. Their experience, their past talks for what they're going to do in the next four years.
Thank you. Mr. Silva, as a city council member, what would you do to stimulate economic growth in the city of El Centro?
Well, I think that we have to look at this both at the national, state, and regional level. Obviously, the state of the economy is hurting our city just like it is any other city in the whole country. The state of California needs to become more business friendly and become an enticement for people to do business in California. Regionally, we have to partner with some of the agencies that Mr. Reza mentioned, and I'll counter his comments in a minute. We have to get involved. We do have to facilitate the opening of businesses in El Centro. I am the Dean of Economic and Workforce Development for Imperial Valley College. I am also a member of the Workforce Investment, past director of the Workforce Investment Board, and a member of the Workforce Development Board now. Mr. Reza has his facts incorrect. The city has not eliminated funding for the SBDC, the Film Commission, and what's the other one? The facade program. In terms of the SBDC, we did make a reduction of funding, but that's forced by the state action in terms of the availability of RDA funds that typically paid for those funds. We had to make a decision. We have reduced the funding. We gave the agencies plenty of time to be able to make modifications to their budget. The overall allocation of funding that comes out of the city for those agencies is minimal. It does have an impact, but it's a minimal impact. But for myself, I had to make a decision. Do we fund those agencies at a minimal level and promote businesses, or do we provide funding for agencies like the Catholic Charities that provide meals to our senior citizens, House of Hope that also provide essential services? And I'll grant you that the overall impact of the funding allocations that we made at the City Council have a greater impact on our citizens, direct impact to our senior citizens and our less fortunate citizens, than it is a reduction of funding to those agencies, which again, it's minimal. We give them a year leeway. We are looking into CDBG funding to reinstate the facade program because I think that there is a value to that program. It's a matter of funding availability. It's a matter of the elimination of RDA funds.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, is there a chance to clarify? Because there was some false information
Yes,
on that.
in the next round. We're about to begin question block number 2, and I'll remind the candidates that during these blocks that the green light indicates you have 30 seconds left, the amber 10 seconds left, and red when it's time to stop. In question block 2 will be single candidate questions with rebuttals and responses available. Each candidate will be given 1 minute for an initial answer. After that, any other candidate that wishes may hold up the R card for a rebuttal. That'll be a 30-second rebuttal, and then the original candidate answering will have another 30 seconds to respond to the rebuttal. And you're limited to only 2 rebuttals during this round. The audience has suggested many questions, and some were for particular candidates. So we'll begin now with Jean Oswald. Go ahead, please.
Mrs. Sanders, we'll start with you this round. This is a question from the audience. Please share your plan for the city of El Centro to retain businesses and grow private sector jobs within our city.
This seems to be a question that was piggybacked on the previous question that was asked of all of us. When we talk about private sector jobs, I did mention earlier on in my response to the previous question that there is no silver bullet. The things that we're doing through the efforts that we can make a difference is opening up our incubator bays, which would give entrepreneurs an opportunity to truly begin to develop that entrepreneurial spirit and start their businesses. Those bays are located out in our industrial park off of Dogwood. The funds that we once upon a time had through our redevelopment agency for loans is no longer available as a result of the cuts. For those in the audience, it's imperative that you understand that the state of California took $2 million or over $2 million from our RDA, redevelopment agency, which then greatly curtailed our ability to actually help stimulate the economy using those funding streams. But having said that, we have worked very hard with all entities to try to make something happen. If individuals come into the council chambers and work with our staff, we'll be able to do that.
Thank you. Our next question will be asked by Charisse.
I'm sorry. Mr. Edney, do you feel there's a disconnect between administration and line workers? If so, how do you correct it?
A disconnect between administration at the city and line
says,
workers?
This is a question from the audience, and it says, do you feel there is a disconnect between administration and line workers? If so, how do you correct it?
Well, in my 8 years with the city, I have not seen that to be a prevalent issue. I think when you have an employee pool of over 200 plus workers, you're always going to have disagreements. I've spent a lot of time working with the frontline help, whether it be in the public safety arena or public works. Many of them have come to my office. I think what we've seen over the last number of years is a maturing team working together. The infrastructure improvements, the improvements that have been made all throughout this community show to a teamwork that is beneficial to this community. It's often you can get sidetracked by one individual issue with one supervisor to another one. But I think there's been an open door policy from the city council all the way down to the city manager and through the various directors. I think myself and most of the council members have spent significant time with city employees and have found that not to be the case.
Thank you. Next question, Jean.
Mr. Reza, what would you do to attract businesses to our downtown?
To attract businesses to downtown, the city has to understand that their responsibility within business development is not to direct how business is created. They have to take a step back. Allow business, their responsibility is to create the right environment in which business can flourish. the volatility of the conditions that exist within Imperial County and the city of El Centro does not allow for the expansion of businesses. The increased unemployment rate that every 6 months is growing by at least 2%. The lack of funding for businesses to grow and expand. The closures that we have seen in downtown area, 20% over the last 2 years. These are issues that the city is not addressing. These are issues that the city is looking towards the downtown area and imposing their will upon the merchants and building owners there. They have to understand that their only role in business development is to provide the right and appropriate environment in which business can flourish. Allow them the time to be able to invest their funds and be able to recapture their funds.
Thank you very much.
Is this the
Next,
rebuttal period?
if you hold up your R.
Okay.
Go ahead, please, Mr. Edney.
I'm concerned with the previous comments because they're not accurate. We have not in any way interfered with the opportunity for businesses to go into the downtown or anywhere else in this community. In fact, we've strived to approve and invite all businesses from all locations because what the number one priority in El Centro is jobs. But let's look at the facts. It's easy to talk about hyperbole, but let's look at the facts. This state is bleeding jobs. Not just El Centro, all the state, California, San Diego, everywhere throughout this state. This is a much larger issue than just the local city of El Centro.
Thank you, Mr. Edney. And there's a 30-second response.
When the city enacts regulations that restrict the way a business can do business in downtown area, where they cannot operate onto the sidewalks, where they can't put up misters or signs, that is restricting business in the downtown area. If we're talking about an issue where the impact is national, let me show you a graph. This is Imperial County. This is our unemployment rate. This is the next second place highest unemployment, almost 30% lower. You can see here on the graph where we have San Diego, Yuba County, which is the second place in highest unemployment rate, how they're not impacted by the national crisis. Let's not blame the national crisis on the problems that we're having here. Let's be responsible. We create this problem.
Thank you, Mr. Ressa. And Therese, you have the next question?
The next question, Mr. Silva, are you aware, this is a question from the audience, by the way, are you aware of the current lawsuits against the city of harassment and hostile work environment? What actions are you going to take to correct them?
Typically, when we meet for closed session, we talk about litigation issues that are affecting the city, but as you know, we are prohibited from disclosing information because it may impact legal proceedings. I will tell you that the council works effectively and cares about the welfare of our employees. Allegations of sexual harassment and allegations of inappropriateness will be handled in a forceful way, and if there's changes that we have to make, personnel or otherwise, the council will be proactive to make those changes. You know, we have asked our city staff to make an awful lot of sacrifices, personal sacrifices that have impacted their pocketbook, and we all feel for that. However, these are the realities of our economy, and the El Centro continues to have a balanced budget because of the tough decisions that we made, but we do care of our employees.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Jean, do you have the next question?
Yes, Mr. Jackson. Unemployment within the city of El Centro remains high. What plans do you have to create jobs in the city?
Well, I think everybody's been talking about creating jobs and unemployment rates, but certainly I know about unemployment rates. We deal with them every day at the workforce level for the county. Our unemployment rates are high, and they are the highest in the nation, but they are a national problem. But locally, we do need to do some things that stimulate industry growth. Attraction of new industry to this area is vital in bringing jobs. I would propose and support a plan where we would look at suspending temporarily impact fees for the city to hopefully stimulate growth or stimulate construction, both residential and commercial. Certainly on the short term, that's going to generate construction jobs, but hopefully on the long term, that's going to generate jobs that are going to be both business and industrial. So there are some things that we can look at. Our impact fees are high. I believe they are the highest in Imperial County as far as building fees. So that is something I think that we could look at and hopefully use that to stimulate growth in the city of El Centro.
And Mr. Ressa will use a rebuttal.
I heard that our unemployment situation is a national issue. That is not true. Let me show you something. The national crisis started in 2008. As you can see, in 2006, we start seeing an increase in unemployment. This is 2 years before the national crisis started. Are we going to blame the national crisis because something that's been occurring since 2008? I'm sorry, 2006? I mean, this is just pulling the wool over your eyes. The responsibility rests in the city council here to make these local decisions that will create the right environment for business to be able to expand and create those job opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Ressa. Mr. Jackson, a response.
Well, simply, that's not accurate. There is a national issue. Unemployment is high all over this nation. I've traveled as chairman of the Workforce Development Board. I've traveled to D.C. for the national conference. I've gone to conferences in California. We are all experiencing high unemployment. Is unemployment high here? Yes, of course it's high. We have a migrant workforce. We have seasonal labor. These are things that contribute to high unemployment. And then you combine that with the national crisis that we're presently going through, and that's increased our rate of unemployment here in Imperial County.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Sharice Alford has the next question.
Mrs. Sanders, would you consider the idea of creating a city ombudsman position that would facilitate disputes between residents and City Hall?
When I hear the term dispute, I mean, I'm of the view you're talking about something to deal with conflict resolution. We have an individual that handles that depending on which department the dispute seems to come from. And that usually rises to the level of ultimately being reviewed by the city manager. Oftentimes, individual residents do not hesitate to call any one council member to assist them in that conflict resolution. And we've been very responsive to them. We will get to the bottom of it by working with the various departments in which they think they have a differences or a dispute, and then we will get back with the resident with an answer. And if that answer is not satisfactory, we then follow up with trying to figure out a way to work a solution that will be amenable to all.
Thank you. Next question from Gene Oswald.
Mr. Edney?
Yes.
In the past, there have been several major projects using city funds that have been awarded to contractors outside of the valley. What will you do to ensure that local contractors get this work when qualified?
Well, I think that's been a question that this city council has dealt with over the last number of years. We've worked, number one, when we passed the charter, the voters approved in 2009. It gave the city the ability to pass some of its own ordinances that might differ from what is responsible or allowed in the state. The difficulty is always trying to balance the need for promoting local job creation with the need for expending the appropriate amount of money for the project. So you're balancing the creation of jobs with the need to not necessarily spend more money just because it's local. It is something that we have grappled with for quite some time to try to find the right balance. And the difficulty is what is considered a local business. We have businesses that establish offices here, and yet all their employees come from out of town whenever there's a project. So it is something we've worked on with other examples from other communities and are trying to come up with an ordinance that will balance and make it fair, but not also increase the cost to the taxpayers.
And Mr. Ressa will use his second rebuttal.
This is very simple to resolve. If we're going to reward giving out contracts to bidders based on the cost of the project, let's think about one thing. If we're going to have local hires, Those people are going to be spending their hard-earned money here locally. It's going to go back into the community. We're creating additional tax revenue for the city. We're creating the opportunity for people to have jobs that will be able to buy large assets, buy their homes. That's additional tax revenue, property values, which is the two main sources of funding for city projects. So let's put the money where it's going to work best for us.
Thank you. Mr. Edney, your response.
Well, I think Mr. Rezo, as we've seen, only has part of the facts. Certainly, we hope that monies can be spent locally. But as you say, we have to represent all the community. And when you do bring in outside contractors, where do? They stay in hotels. That creates commerce in this community, transportation occupancy tax. And also they go out to restaurants. We certainly want to use as many local contractors as we can, but we also have to be very concerned about litigation. And as we know, California is very big on litigation, and a contractor who doesn't get a job from out of town immediately threatens a lawsuit because of the unfair labor practice. So these are things that we have to be balancing.
Thank you very much. Our next question from Sharice.
Mr. Reza, the city of El Centro has been a charter city for 2 years now. In your opinion, is it working? Why or why not?
I think the fact that the city elected to become a charter city, really the impact of it is very limited. The fact that state or federal dollars are being utilized will require them to pay prevailing wages. The prevailing wage allows people to have a more livable wage and to allow them to be able to purchase additional products within our local community. I will not criticize the local the city for making that decision. I would have hoped they would have not done so. I think it is important that we look towards protect the interests of our local community and our local residents by giving them a chance to be able to assume livable wages with benefits that in the long end comes back to benefit all of us. The only way that we can increase the quality of life here is by investing those funds locally here. Keep that money here. Those companies that sorry about that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edney.
Well, I'm concerned about the comments because I, as the champion of the idea for the charter, and we had community meetings but the city council did not pass that charter. The community passed this charter by 60% of the vote. So a job of a council member and a council team is to present ideas and take them to the public. We took an idea to improve the city governance, and it was passed by 60% of the vote. I think our job is to listen to the community.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ressa, a response.
That would have been very convenient had it been explained fully to the community what the charter city benefit is. We will still be subject to prevailing rates whenever a state or federal dollar comes into play. It does not change anything. The fact that we step away from that only allows people to come in and take advantage of lower wages, which does not create economic development. Minimum wage jobs do not help us. It gets people off. It gets people jobs. It gets them some source of income, but it does not assist economic development.
Thank you very much. Jean, our next question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Silva?
Oh, wait.
I'm not able to rebut that, Mr.
Oh, I didn't see your card.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Mrs. Sanders, please.
Yes, I just wanted to add some points of clarification. During the 2009, there was a great deal of discussion citywide among a number of members of this community, from rank and file individuals and also from the press, etc. Each council member had an opportunity to appoint 2 people to this committee. The committee fanned the entire community to get the input. Mr. Raza is correct on one point. Yes, anytime funds come into the city and there is a need for it to be leveraged with federal or state monies, it will be prevailing wage. On the other hand, there are funds and projects that we're doing without using the prevailing wage as a result of the charter.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sanders. Any further rebuttals? Okay, thank you.
Do I get a chance to respond to that rebuttal?
Yes, you may.
The question I responded to was the lack of community information as to the fact that prevailing wages will still be attached whenever we use federal or state dollars. We do not get away from that. And that's something that the public did not understand. They felt that all contracts given out by our local city will not have prevailing wages attached to it. And that was incorrect in allowing that assumption to occur.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Silva, go ahead, a rebuttal.
I just have to say that that's just totally incorrect. The benefits and advantages and disadvantages of the charter city were fully vested. Probably the single organization that looks after the interests of business is the Chamber of Commerce. And Chamber of Commerce, with full disclosure, with full information, with full understanding of what a charter city does to a community, not only endorsed, but worked hard to get that measure passed. And it did pass by a very significant number of people, voters, because it is good for the city. We have had one project that was not subject to prevailing wage because it only used local funding.
Thank you very much, Mr. Silva. Mr. Ressa?
I go back again. Thank you. Once again, we're talking about economic development. Increased wages brings economic development into the community. The opportunity for people to have jobs. When we're talking about having a 30% unemployment, giving them just minimum wage jobs does not help us. $16,000 a year does not get you much in the way of being able to purchase your home or purchase quality articles for your family. I'm talking about investing the money when that money is going to stay within our community. There's one thing we can do. We can tie bids into contracts that will award additional points if you're going to use local hire, if you're going to use higher prevailing rates.
Thank you very much. And Jean has our next question.
Is it time for the third round? Okay. One more. Okay, Mr. Silva. How can the city ensure sufficient affordable housing?
It's a difficult question to answer. We get our regional housing needs assessments, and the city is below target as it relates to providing affordable housing. The city is doing everything that we can to be able to increase that affordability. There is a very large housing project being proposed on North 8th Street. The cost of that project is a little concerning to a lot of us. However, that is going to be providing 52 units of low-income housing in our community. We have to continue working with the Housing Authority. We also have to continue working and looking for grants, looking for partnerships to be able to provide that affordable housing to our citizens.
Thank you. Next question, Sharice.
Mr. Jackson, the city has spent millions of tax dollars to redevelopment downtown. However, there are more empty buildings than ever. What specific ideas do you have to turn around El Centro's downtown?
Well, many of you know I've served on the downtown board for the last 5 years, and I have a special place in my heart for the downtown. I was practically raised there. My mother had a beauty shop in the downtown. So I care about the downtown. We certainly have some challenges in the downtown. Our mall has sucked a lot of the retail out of the downtown. Certainly as we have expanded our city, both towards the mall and towards the Target Center and Walmarts, those have taken away from the small mom and pop shops that used to be in the downtown. This is a challenge that a lot of downtowns are facing throughout the United States. There are things that we can do. We have tried to promote the downtown through events. We've tried to get people to come down to the downtown and recognize what the downtown has to offer. There are still some retail businesses in the downtown. There are now more service-oriented businesses, but there are things that we can do to maybe transform the downtown into more eateries and those type of businesses that might attract more people and then relocate some of those smaller businesses to those areas.
Thank you very much. That concludes our question block number 2. What we're going to do now is have a lightning round, and each candidate will have 45 seconds to answer a question. There will be no rebuttals or responses. Jean, do you have our first question?
Yes, Mr. Edney, we'll start with you this round. What accomplishments are you most proud of while serving on the City Council?
Well, thank you. I would say we just discussed it. I'm most proud of two accomplishments. One is balancing the budget. I said when I ran for city council 8 years ago that I would bring a business approach, and we've done that. It's been the highest priority, and as long as I'm on this council, it will be the highest priority to make sure that we have the resources to cover the services, that we do not have to reduce services and reduce employment and cut positions. And that's what happened right before I came on the council. The second priority is the charter, because not only did I champion the charter, but I took it to the public. It was clearly debated among the public. It was voted on by the public by 60%. That tells you that I'm listening to what the public's concerns are.
Thank you, Mr. Edney. Sharice, another question?
Mr. Reza, would you support or oppose an effort to restrict development within the outlying areas of the city until empty buildings within the core have been filled?
It is not the role of the city to restrict job promotion, job creation, and job expansion. Business expansion. It is the role of the city to, like I said before, to create the right environment for investment opportunities from local from entrepreneurs. It is the role of the city to see where the problem lies of why businesses are leaving the interior areas of our city and going to the borders of our city. We have to find out what the problem is. We have to be able to identify the issues there. Why aren't businesses wanting to remain within the downtown area and interior part of the city? That's an issue that this city council in the last 4 years has not addressed, has not answered, and that's why we're having these problems.
Thank you very much. Jean, another question?
Mr. Silva, what ideas do you have to expand the graffiti abatement program in El Centro?
We have to partner with agencies like the El Centro Chamber of Commerce. I think this is a community problem. It's going to require community involvement. The proper utilization of our code enforcement officer and have some real leverage to be able to go after offenders, working with our DA office and be able to prosecute. I think that until we establish some legal enforceable penalties for people that commit these crimes, we have to look at it from a community approach.
Thank you very much. Sharice?
Yeah, Mr. Jackson, what ideas do you have to clean up the city's alleys, residential and commercial areas?
I'm sorry, the alleys?
Yeah, what ideas do you have to clean up the city's alleys, residential and commercial areas?
Well, I think that starts with code, with our code enforcement officers and the funding of those positions. I know for many years we didn't even have a code enforcement officer within the city of El Centro. We currently now do, but I believe that person's probably overwhelmed with the amount of work that there is in this city. There are some things that need to be looked at. There are funding within the, I believe, the trash contract that provides for some of the maintenance for alleys and alleyways, both commercial and residential. We probably need to take advantage of that. We need to look at these alleys and target areas within the city, citywide, not just in certain areas, that need that attention. As far as abated properties, that again falls within the code enforcement officers, and we need to start putting some teeth within that enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Jean?
Yes, Mrs. Sanders. If reelected, what would you like to accomplish during your first 12 months in office?
The city of El Centro is certainly a home to so many of us. And since I'm a native here, I'd like to see that we continue to move forward with the projects we already have in place. We talk about clean alleys and clean streets. We're working currently with the community service crews, which are from the Centinela State Prison, who are assisting us in this endeavor because of the short of funds within the city budget. We're also working in a three-prong approach with our code enforcement officers and our legal department in order to add the teeth that we need to keep it clean. But most importantly, the quality of life issues are the ones that I think are going to make this city a livable place for all of us to want to stay in. And that includes, in my view, the parks and recreation opportunities, the adult center for multi-generational opportunities.
Thank you very much. The tyranny of the clock precludes another round of lightning questions. What we're going to move now is to our closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. We will begin in the reverse order that we started. So, Mr. Silva, you'll go first.
Some allegations have been made about the effectiveness of the city and the quality of life in our community. I have to tell you that I am very proud of serving on the city council. I am very proud to be the mayor. Ultimately, Mr. Jackson says something that is absolutely correct. This election is going to be about choices. Do you want to bring in the incumbents? Do you want to bring in new people? It's going to be basically boiled down to a couple of questions. Are you happy with the state of the city? And I submit to you that most people are. Do you want stability, experience, and leadership? Do you want to maintain a path of progress, prudency, and collaboration? If you do, then I ask for your support and your vote. Allow me to continue to represent you. We still have work to do. We must continue to fight the state in their attempt to dissolve redevelopment agencies, which give us critical funding for the majority of our public infrastructure projects in the city, as well as funding to agencies that provide for our citizens. We must get our library back in service at a level that can adequately serve our community. We must continue to be fiscally prudent to ensure that the financial health of the city remains strong. We must continue to look into the future to ensure that our children and grandchildren live in a city that they can be proud of. For this, I ask for your support and your vote on November 8th.
Thank you. Mr. Ressa?
On November 8th, all of you will be faced with a very vital decision. I agree with Mr. Silva. You have to ask yourself a very important question. Are you better off 4 years ago than you were today? Do you think you're going to be better off 4 years into the future? Mr. Silva said that the city is well off and that most of you will respond that you are. Let me ask the 30% of you that are unemployed, the people there are under the threat of losing jobs. Those of you that have to work 2, 3 jobs to put food on your table, are you happy? Are you happy that your city is, throughout the entire nation, being called the highest unemployment rate, the capital of the economic crisis? Are you happy about that? Are you happy that your kids have to leave El Centro and go somewhere else to find jobs? Do you think the future of your children is being respected and protected by what the city council has done? I challenge you to make a decision. I have criticized the performance of the city council. I do not criticize them personally. I think they are devoted and I think they're committed. And I will say that here and I'll say that everywhere. But I believe they do not understand what economic development is. I've criticized a lot of things here, but I also know what my job is. I know how to perform economic development. And for that, I have a series of strategies revolving economic development, revolving downtown revitalization, employment generation, business growth and expansion. These will be listed on my website, is rizaforcitycouncil.com. I invite you to take a look at them. I invite you to analyze them. I invite you to criticize them. These are strategies that the acting city council has never contemplated, has never asked to be brought to them. These are issues that affect you. These are issues of your future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ressa. Mr. Edney.
Let me conclude by thanking all of you for coming this evening. I appreciate your interest in the community and having the opportunity to listen to what we have to offer. 8 years ago, when I first decided to run for the city council, I went out and I spoke to lots of people in this community, business owners, community members, young, old, in between. And I said one thing to them. I said, you may not like everything I say, you may not like every vote I cast, but I will always tell you the truth. We've heard a lot of talk tonight. We've turned hard, we're promises. I'm going to promise you this. We're going to solve this. I'm going to tell you the truth. This is a hard-working city council who has a great many accomplishments that it can tie to our work and our dedication to this community. Not pie in the sky, dedication to actual improvements within our control. We can talk about a lot of things, but let's look reality in the face. There's a lot of things we don't control, okay? I don't control that the state stole $2.5 million this year and will continue to steal $500,000 each year from this city budget, okay? What I do control is the ability to control our costs without cutting services. We've done that. I do control providing infrastructure in this community and improving that infrastructure. We have delivered. We do control responsibility for listening to the community. When they asked for a senior center, we delivered it. When they asked for a bus transit center, we've delivered it. When they asked for a multi-generational facility that'll take our kids off the streets, we're delivering it. So it is about delivering results, not about the talk. I ask for your support on November 8th.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edney. Mrs. Sanders.
Thank you very much for being in attendance tonight and witnessing the comments coming from each of us. And I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this event. I've been with this city, as many of you know, for a number of years, and over that time I've seen it grow. It has actually doubled in its population. But through that doubling, I've also saw many, many benefits that you all have been the recipients of. The mall has been really a wonderful place to offer you a place and a destination to do your shopping. The fact that we have been able to put in place an additional opportunity for enhancing your health care by putting the outpatient clinic located at the end of Main Street. The transit center, which will absolutely enhance your ability to move around and become much more mobile with transportation. These kinds of things will revitalize the downtown. Downtown is not an easy place. Many of those businesses that are boarded up are property owners who have made decisions either to not embrace what we're trying to do and or they're absentee landlords. For those that are there, we've worked with. And I'd like to name a few. We work with the individuals of Office Supply because they were the ones who actually put in place all of the furniture for our RDA redevelopment agency when we actually went about upgrading it. We work with individuals, developers such as Castillo Construction by doing our shade structure at City Hall. We also work with Duggan's Construction when they upgraded the redevelopment agency. So all of these individuals, while they are what we would categorize local, these are the ones who are actually being the beneficiaries of what the city can do to stimulate this economy. We also work with the Obama administration by getting a stimulus package to work on things like that transit center. And that transit center is going to be a great benefit for the downtown. That is one way to continue to revitalize and offer opportunities for the residents of this community. So those are the things that I'm most proud of, and I, again, ask for your vote on November 8th.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanders. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank the El Centro Chamber of Commerce and the Government Affairs Committee for putting on this forum. I believe this is an opportunity for the residents of El Centro to hear the candidates, hear our ideas, get to know us a little better. This is not my first time running for this council, as many of you know. I am dedicated to this city. I have put myself out there. I have opened myself to the criticisms of some residents, some political or elected officials, but I'm steadfast in my dedication to this city and to making this a better place for all of us. I don't, as one of the other individuals here said, I don't question the dedication of this council. I do think that there are new ideas and new directions that obviously somebody new brings to the table. I believe that I am that person. I believe I'm well positioned for that. My service on the El Centro Plan Commission, my service on the Imperial County Workforce Development Board, my service on many other boards within the Imperial County has put me in a position to not only learn and see other ideas, but also my travels throughout this country, as some of those positions have taken me, has also let me see best practices in other areas. Those are things that we need to bring to the city of El Centro, whether it's business development, job creation, whether it's parks and recreational opportunities for our youth or our seniors. These are things that I will bring to a city. I will work with the council. I will build consensus. But I am also not afraid to disagree with my colleagues if the need should arise. I think that constructive criticism, I think open conversation, transparency, these are things that this council can benefit from. I don't believe that everything is always going to be a 5-0 vote. I believe that there needs to be some further discussion, and there probably needs to be some constructive criticism about some decisions that are made for this city. I believe that I can do that in a constructive manner, in a respectful manner, and I ask for your support and your vote for Jason Jackson for November 8th for El Centro City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On behalf of the El Centro Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau and its Political Affairs Committee, I want to thank the candidates for their participation here tonight. On behalf of our President, Sharice Alford, and our CEO, Kathy Kinnerson, I'd like to thank our Chamber volunteers who helped things move along smoothly tonight. I especially want to compliment the audience for their attention and demeanor and your contribution in the way of questions that you asked. Let me remind you that the election is coming up soon, November 8th, 2011, and we expect to see everyone at the polls. Thank you again for coming tonight.
This concludes the El Centro Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau candidates debate for 3 El Centro City Council seats.